They fled murder, rape and burning villages. Now the Rohingya are being told Bangladesh and Myanmar have agreed to send them back home. But is it safe? I'm Imran Garta, and today's Newsmaker is the Rohingya repatriation deal. The process to send back one of the world's most persecuted minorities to the place they fled from is finally underway. Bangladesh has given Myanmar an initial list of more than 8,000 Rohingya names to get the ball rolling. The process had been due to start last month, but the Rohingya are refusing to leave, and the UN agrees it still isn't safe for them to return. In fact, more refugees keep arriving every day. So where does this leave the repatriation deal? Should it be abandoned altogether? That debate in a moment, but first here's Sandra Gatman with an exclusive report from the world's largest refugee camp.
There's no place like it in the world. The Kutupalong camp in Bangladesh hosts nearly 1 million Rohingya refugees, driven out of Myanmar by fear and unimaginable violence. Their stories and images of scorched villages and mass graves have led to serious accusations against Myanmar's military.
Powerful forces in the Burmese government have denied the ethnic cleansing in Rakhine State.
It is amounting to crimes against humanity.
The world cannot sit by and watch genocide taking place.
But Myanmar denies the allegations, and Bangladesh is pushing ahead with a repatriation deal to send the Rohingya back. Myanmar says it's ready. The Newsmakers obtained footage from Rakhine State of reception areas being built for returning refugees. Temporary camps described as open-air prisons by Human Rights Watch. It's not somewhere the Rohingya are willing to return to. Many are still gripped by fear. In the past, repatriations of the Rohingya from Bangladesh have been far from voluntary. After the first major influx of Rohingya in 1978, the Bangladeshi government ordered the return of more than 180,000 refugees back to Myanmar. Those who didn't cooperate had food rations taken away. Around 10,000 refugees reportedly died from malnutrition. After another wave of Rohingya migration in the early 90s, Bangladesh was once again accused of forcing returns. Only 10% of refugees had volunteered. Years later, the UNHCR also came under fire for its role in overseeing the mass repatriation programs. An independent report from 2011 said the UNHCR explained away reports of protection abuses, including accounts of beating and extortions. Agency employees also said pressure from headquarters to go ahead with repatriation was enormous. There was a very clear signal: the refugees had to go. 20 years on, Bangladesh is trying to restart the process. So far, around 8,000 names have been collected.
We have to motivate them. They will be better in that place. That's why we need to motivate them. We have a land-hungry country. Already 1 million people added to our population.
Bangladesh says it can't cope and is trying to stop more refugees from reaching its shores.
These are the types of fishing boats that fishermen used to use to bring Rohingya refugees from Myanmar back to Bangladesh. Still, they go out fishing every day and they see people waiting to be rescued. Now it's been months since anyone has been able to cross. The Coast Guard are constantly patrolling these waters, and the fishermen here say they're frustrated that they can't help. But the Rohingya are still finding ways to escape. Thousands of refugees continue to arrive, and many more are on the way. Sandra Gatman, The Newsmakers, Cox's Bazar.
Well, to discuss this, I'm joined here in the studio by Hla Jo. He's the chairman of the European Rohingya Council. From Chiang Mai in Thailand, we have Nyo Aung Myint. He's a former member of Myanmar's ruling National League for Democracy. And we also have Mohammed Yusuf Salim. He's the Secretary General of Bangladesh's ruling Awami League in South London. Gentlemen, I thank you all for joining us here on the Newsmakers. Let me start with you, Hla Jo.
Thank you very much. Yes.
This repatriation deal, is it a good idea?
I don't think this is a good idea at this moment because the Myanmar's genocidal campaigns against Rohingya people has not stopped yet. Every day, like 200 Rohingya are fleeing to Bangladesh. In 2018, like 1.5 months alone, there are more than 6,000 Rohingya already fled to Bangladesh. Many hundreds Rohingya are on their way to Bangladesh. There are 6,500 Rohingya are stranded in no man's land, getting threatenings from the Myanmar authority.
I see.
So this repatriation deal is really, to think of this repatriation deal is insane, utterly insane, while there is an active genocidal campaign going on against Rohingya
utterly
people.
Insane, as you say. Nyo Aung Myint. So we have Hla Jo saying here that it's utterly insane, it's a genocidal campaign. Others don't use the word genocide, but they use the phrase ethnic cleansing, the US and the UN included in that group. That's why they're so suspicious about the intentions of Myanmar. Tell me why you disagree.
Yeah, because, you know, the government of Myanmar, led by the state councillor Dawn San Suu Kyi, and then military commander-in-chief, the senior general Min Aung Hlaing, already promised and already follow the international standard. In this sense, that I'm not really sure that why the Muslims are leaving from Myanmar, especially on the northern Rakhine. But you know, this is what I really feel that because of the international pressure is that it was a little bit biased against the government and the Myanmar military. This is making a more trouble than a positive approach.
Okay, let me quote Amnesty International to you, if you don't mind. They say authorities in Myanmar have robbed, abducted, and deliberately starved Rohingya men, women, and children in an effort to make life so intolerable for members of the minority group that they will leave the country. Is Amnesty International making that up?
I think no one could prove it, that this is like kind of rape, like a rob, and then, you know, the extrajudiciary killings and stuff like that. Because that was the government, the authorities, which is the security forces. 16 has been charged against that the inhumanity. So in this case, why the international community needed more? What you know? The point is the Rohingya should go back to the Myanmar. That's a point. But right now, it was a more difficult situation. Is created by the media, international. It was like kind of very much like kind of witch hunt. It was not that the more positive and more cooperative, and because the government and military of Myanmar is not a part of the problem. They are part of the solution.
Okay. I want to get a response from Hla Jo, but just in a moment. So hold that thought for a moment. Let me bring in Mohammed Yusuf Salim. One of the criticisms of Bangladesh is that Bangladesh wants to get rid of this problem. They just don't want to deal with the refugees, so they're striking a deal with Myanmar and pushing them back. Is that fair?
Well, let me explain. Thank you very much for inviting me in your program. Bangladesh, it is not a Bangladeshi problem. Bangladeshi government is purely doing on humanitarian ground. Bangladesh has got no responsibility to look after the more than 1 million people But the Honorable Prime Minister of Bangladesh recently visited Italy, Rome, and she was talking to the Pope Paul of Rome, and she was explaining, we are from the Bangladesh government, we are trying both ways. It's a very sensitive issue. Bangladesh is trying hard to minimize this human catastrophe by helping the people who came, Rohingya people, to send them back. And that's why recently the Burmese foreign minister visiting Bangladesh, and we had a talk about that, and Bangladesh is trying hard as much as possible to send them back. So that is not the Bangladesh is trying both ways. International community, especially the United Nations, should be more effective to help to safeguard the human catastrophe.
And undoubtedly, it is massive.
These people.
Undoubtedly, this is a massive refugee camp. Bangladesh is shouldering a heavy burden right now. Liao, I know you want to respond to what?
Yeah, Bangladesh.
Certainly, and I'm going to bring you in a bit. Certainly, I'm going to bring you in again in a bit. But Liao, you want to respond to what Nyo Aung Myint was saying, because I saw you shaking your head vociferously when he was talking.
This gentleman living in Chiang Mai has never visited to Mongdo and Butidong. He has never seen what has been going on there with his own eyes. He is just swallowing what the military has been selling in whole country, like anybody else, including from all society, military, armed forces, governments, monastic orders, general public, everybody is swallowing what the military is selling. So he doesn't know what is, maybe he is ignorant or he is working.
Okay, so let's ask him, are you ignorant, sir? Are you just swallowing what the military is saying because you are in denial, you don't want to deal with the problem? Talk to each other, gentlemen, talk to each other.
I mean, actually, I just, flew back from Yangon yesterday. I do not live in Chiang Mai anymore. So, I just visited here for meetings. So that's why I was in a Rakhine state, and I got a lot of reports that I read, and because the problem was the very first problem is that the ARSA created the militant group, or the government that declared that, which is the terrorist group. So that created more the problem, and then the real problem is that I do not want to argue with him, but I just wanted to find a solution. This is what I really wanted to do it.
Yes.
Because there are two communities between Rakhine and then you call it the Rohingya, our Burmese call it the Bengalis, and then whatever you call it. That name is not the issue. The issue is that the both communities do not have a trust. So we need to build it. Okay.
Yes. Okay, so Nyo Aung Myint, this is an interesting point, because you say both communities don't have trust, but there seems to be a huge power imbalance here, right? You can't just say, okay, we don't have trust, we need to rebuild trust between us. Only one side has the military and control, and the other are stateless, homeless refugees. Lao, you want to respond?
Yes, the trust, the trust between the Rohingya community and Rakhine ethnic community, the Burmese government has created this mistrust. This is the only.
Tell me how they've created it.
This how Burmese government has created that by spreading fake news, hatred, and by preaching, by using monks to preach hatred against the Rohingya, and by putting Rohingya as a national security threat, which is not true. Rohingya, we have been trying to be part of. We were part of Myanmar society. We were excluded from part of Myanmar society. We have been trying to be part of part of Myanmar society. But Burmese government has never think us as part of Myanmar society.
So tell Nyo Aung Myint, in your estimation, how much, Lao, of a percentage of those refugees belong to ARSA? He considers ARSA a threat. ARSA have done things. They've blown up soldiers and so on. So out of 1 million people, what percentage belong to ARSA, and what percentage make his theory plausible that there's a security threat?
There is a very, very small percentage of the young, the desperate, the Rohingya who lost their parents or who lost everything, and they have no hope in their life, except responding the Myanmar securities, the repression, unbearable repression, persecution. So this group a very small minority, and this minority is the Myanmar government military has created a situation where this youth has no way except the holding what they have, like sword, like handmade, homemade weapons. This is not a terrorist group.
Okay.
How can you say this terrorist group? If they are a terrorist group, and they would have the sophisticated weapons, they would have some strategy. There is no strategy. There is no weapon. These are desperate youth, Rohingya youth, who lost everything, including their parents, due to the Burmese security.
Okay, so in your own mint, Lao Zhou is creating a context for this. He says, you deprive them of citizenship, you call them Bengalis, you don't give them rights, you have them living like rats in camps for decades. This is an inevitable development where you have some from among them who turn to extremism, and now the entire whole is being punished as a result of that. Tell me why you don't like that.
Because, you know, I would like to blame the former British, you know, the colonial, the masters. The British created the problem. And then the conflict started in the very, you know, the early 50s when the Rohingya militant killed the thousands of the Rakhine, the native. You know, the British colonial period, it also brought that the issue here. And then, you know, the government of Myanmar also punished and then also suppressed the Buddhist, that what he called the Buddhist extremists. So in that point that I don't think this is what the Myanmar government systematically create the problem against the Rohingya community.
But even if, even if that was true, right, they don't have any power right now. You have all the power right now. So even if that was true, and I know this is disputed, but you have all the power. Tell me these people have any political or military power at all. They don't.
No, I mean, the point that he said that no hope. Yeah, of course, that in our country, it was not only a Rohingya, but also civil war, the more than, you know, 60 years of the civil war, it is still fighting. And then that's of course, we got a very problem in our country. But the point is that because of ASER, they have no hope. That's why they took it. The armed struggle against, and they beheaded the police. The 13 police in 2016, 2017, they attack, and then another killing. So, and then also killing because of the two community. I mean that Hindu community, the other smaller community, other smaller ethnic groups are also fear. They all in fear.
Okay.
Not only the Rohingya.
Okay, I want to bring in. Okay, fair enough. Okay, so you say the others also fear them, and again, I'm sorry for interrupting you, Mohammed Yusuf Salim. I want to circle back to the idea of the repatriation deal. We have the UN refugee chief warning that conditions are not right to send Rohingya back into Myanmar, even if it's just 8,000 to begin with. He's saying the Myanmar government hasn't addressed their exclusion, denial of rights, and lack of citizenship, right? And of course, you have the monsoon season coming. It might make things worse. On top of that, Human Rights Watch saying they don't trust that Myanmar would be welcoming these people back. With all of those warnings, tell me why Bangladesh has still decided that it wants to proceed with this policy of cutting a deal with Myanmar and sending people back when the conditions aren't right.
Yeah, I am sure that United Nations concern is 100% right. But as I said, Bangladesh has got no choice, and Bangladesh sincerely wants the international pressure. International community should work more actively. My other friends were saying rightly that this Rohingya community, they are getting blamed for nothing. They are very weak people. They have got no sophisticated weapons. You cannot blame them. And at this moment, if we send them back like that, they will be in a serious problem. So international community should come. That's why our Honorable Prime Minister is talking to the United Nations officials and Pope Paul, as I said.
Right.
But nothing is happening. But Bangladesh, what can Bangladesh do? It's not Bangladesh's problem.
Okay,
Bangladesh is trying hard on humanitarian ground.
It wasn't Bangladesh's problem to begin with, but of course it is Bangladesh's problem in practice on the ground right now, whether you like it or not, whether you wanted to be involved or not. I want to move on very quickly because we're running out of time. Lao Jiao, this is going to be for you. Here's a list of some of the demands by the Rohingya for voluntary repatriations. They want Myanmar to allow international media, right groups and humanitarian aid groups in Arakan or Rakhine State freely. They want the release of Rohingya prisoners without any exception, as they say. And they want no accusation on any Rohingya about any past event. Now, I mean, it's a bit unreasonable, isn't it? Because if somebody was involved in a crime, if somebody was involved in, for example, the blowing up of a police post or the beheading of someone who was part of the Myanmar army, surely they should face justice. Aren't these demands a little unreasonable from some of them?
Of course, if a Rohingya is if Rohingya involved in committing any crimes, he should be face justice. He should be face according to the rule of law.
Right.
But you can't like, for example, recently Myanmar government released a list of ours. There is a list of children whose name is in the name of the child is a man name, but the picture was women. A girl. So it is really, so people are scared of this.
They're afraid to go back.
Of course, they are afraid to go back. They can never go to genocide.
So what's going to happen? They're going to stay in Bangladesh forever?
No, they cannot stay in Bangladesh forever because they have to go back to their home ancestral land. But the international community, including Bangladesh government, has to create a situation where Rohingya can go safely with dignified way, with the guarantee to the citizenship and everything. If Myanmar government is not considering as part of Myanmar society, international community has to think of creating new and protected, self-administered Rohingya region. If Myanmar government is, I don't think Myanmar government would ever consider Rohingya as part of Myanmar society. In that case, the international community has to think of a UN-protected, self-administered
Well, that's one of the
area.
goals of the Annan Commission report, one of the recommendations to eventually get to give the Rohingya people citizenship. We seem very far away from that for the moment. What is absolutely guaranteed is more than 1 million people are suffering. Hundreds of thousands of them are suffering unimaginably in terrible conditions.
Exactly.
We hope there will be a solution. Lao Jiao, Nyo Aung Mint, and Muhammad Yusuf Salim, I thank you all for joining us here on the Newsmakers.
Thank you. I can assure you, just for 1 minute, I can assure you Bangladesh government is working hard with the international community to help these unfortunate people of Rohingya.
Still ahead on the Newsmakers, Israel's Prime Minister stands accused of corruption once again. This time, could the scandal end his political career? And Kenya's bitter power struggle. We speak to the lawyer who oversaw Raila Odinga's mock inauguration and was then deported for treason. Welcome back to the Newsmakers. It's a scandal that could threaten Benjamin Netanyahu's political career. After a year-long investigation, police have concluded the Israeli Prime Minister should face corruption charges. He is accused of receiving inappropriate gifts from wealthy supporters and bribing a newspaper for favorable coverage. To make matters worse for him, several members of his inner circle have also been indicted. The opposition is now demanding his resignation, but Netanyahu stands defiant, saying the allegations are just a witch hunt against him. So, can he survive this latest scandal? Or could the country soon be looking for a new leader? For more, here's Christine Provolakis.
Benjamin Netanyahu's ability to survive scandal has earned him the nickname the Magician. Now his special talent may have run its course. After an investigation lasting more than a year, police say the Israeli Prime Minister should face charges over allegedly receiving lavish and inappropriate gifts. In Case 1000, police say they found sufficient evidence to indict Netanyahu over allegedly accepting thousands of dollars in gifts, such as champagne and cigars from Hollywood producer Arnon Milchan and Australian billionaire James Packer. In return, Netanyahu allegedly helped pass legislation that would benefit Miran's business and tried to help him get a visa to the U.S.
אתם יודעים שאני עושה את הכל כשדבר אחד ויחיד לנגד עיניי, טובת המדינה. לא בשביל סיגרים מחבר, לא בשביל סיקור עיתונאי, לא בשביל שום דבר.
In case 2000, Netanyahu has allegedly been taped saying he would restrict the circulation of Israel Hayom in return for Yediot Ahronot newspaper giving him more favorable coverage. One of Netanyahu's closest aides has agreed to testify against him. Netanyahu's predecessor, Ehud Olmert, has faced a police investigation. He resigned before he was charged. Later, he was convicted of bribery and served 16 months in prison.
You can't be a prime minister, foreign minister, and health minister while you are spending most of your time with lawyers. It is impossible to represent us in the world when every leader you meet knows that you are accused of serious charges. For the benefits of the citizens of Israel, the prime minister needs to leave his position.
He cannot be any longer the Prime Minister of Israel. He cannot deal with this anymore.
I'm here to call on him and say, hey guy, go home. Israel is a very, very difficult country to run. And there is no way in hell he has the peace of mind to take sound decisions when he knows that around the corner there is a very serious jail time.
Over a 3-decade political career, Netanyahu has been accused of a range of offenses, from accepting improper gifts to spending too much money on ice cream and wasting tens of thousands of dollars on a custom-fitted bed for a 5-hour flight to London. Close confidants and even family members have also come under suspicion. But Netanyahu has always managed to escape prosecution. He's dismissed the latest police investigation as a media-driven witch hunt.
I think he's a good prime minister, good for the country, and good for himself. He maintains the state in a good condition.
It's now up to the Attorney General to determine whether to press charges against him. Netanyahu seems at the top of his political game, celebrating the U.S. decision to recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital. He's also serving the longest consecutive term of any Israeli prime minister. But the latest scandal may be the most serious challenge yet, leaving many to wonder, can or should Netanyahu remain in office? Christine Pirovolakis, The Newsmakers.
Well, joining me now from West Jerusalem is Ksenia Svetlova. She's a member of the Knesset, representing the opposition coalition Zionist Union. In Tel Aviv, we have Neri Zilber. He's a fellow at the Washington Institute for Near East Policy and a former executive with the World Jewish Congress. And completing our panel is Ran Bar Yoshafat. He's the deputy director of the Kohelet Policy Forum, an Israeli think tank. Ksenia, let me begin with you. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says this is yet another futile investigation. It's a contrived bubble that will burst. Is he right?
Well, the Prime Minister knows what to say in this situation. It's not the first time that he is being investigated. And his formula is quite, quite obvious. He will accuse everybody that is now is engaged in the persecution in the following, these details that they are lying. Then he will deny, that he said it. Then he will continue with denying all the allegations. And then he will blame the media, the police, the Supreme Court, and basically everybody who dares to, say that he is involved in some wrongdoing. So this is the formula. This is how he works. And I think it's quite clear today that when we are discussing yet another charges that now might be brought against him, that I think that Benjamin Netanyahu, who said exactly 10 years ago, he said that the Prime Minister who is involved in so many investigations cannot, allow to continue. He cannot be allowed to continue the ruling of the government. He should resign. He said it about Olmert. He should follow his own words.
Okay, so Ran Bar Yoshafat, he said it about Olmert. Why doesn't he follow his own words? and do the dignified thing and resign?
I think we need to understand that in Israel, if the prime minister resigns, that means that the whole government resigns. What if you're wrong? What if he's not corrupt? So you just change the government without a proper procedure of election. I'm saying just like Israel is a country under law and every citizen can be put on trial, even the prime minister, let the prime minister have his day in court. Maybe he's not guilty. Furthermore, there's an appeal process. So only until we were done with the legal procedure, like any other citizen, then you can say what will happen. What is the pressure of asking him to resign? What good would come out of this?
Interestingly, 45% of Israelis, Neri Zilber, in that Channel 2 poll, say that he should resign even before the Attorney General makes up his mind. What does that suggest? Has Netanyahu lost all political momentum, whether the courts agree with him or not?
Well, I think it suggests that depending on your political point of view, you either demand that the prime minister resign even before there's an official indictment, or you wait and see for the legal process to play out. So I think it's quite a polarizing moment in Israeli politics. And I would add, both guests are correct. There is a lot of cloud of suspicion around the prime minister. At the very least, these are moral violations, ethical violations, and at the same time, they might not be criminal. So there's both a legal situation at play as well as a legal situation at play. And right now, to be honest, Netanyahu seems to have at least solidified his political flank as the police and legal process play out.
Right. Ksenia, we have allegations of bribery, fraud, breach of trust. We have the issue with the telecommunications company. Why aren't you comfortable to just sit back and see your opposition implode and let justice take its course?
Well, our position is it doesn't change. It doesn't matter who is now in the government. When Ehud Olmert was in the government, it was the very same members of his government. It was Ehud Barak and Tzipi Livni who demanded that Ehud Olmert should resign, even before the decision of the Attorney General. It was quite clear that, this is how we should behave as somebody who was elected by the people and who works for the people. And this is what we are doing right now. So our position is has nothing to do with politics. It's about morals. It's about ethics. It's about public responsibility. And we will continue to demand from the Prime Minister to take the responsibility for things that he's done and said. And by the way, in the last speech that he gave after the recommendations of the police were published, he admitted that, for example, that he intervened in order to close Channel 10 in Israel, intervening with the media and trying to close a media channel who was oppositional of him, who was critical of him. For this, you don't need a court. You don't need the decision of the Attorney General.
Yeah, let's actually dip into that and have a little listen to what he had to say. So this is after the police say, hey, we recommend an indictment. This is some of what he had to say. Let's have a little listen.
I will continue to lead Israel responsibly and faithfully for as long as you, the citizens of Israel, choose me to lead. I am certain that the truth will be revealed and that the next elections will be held on schedule. I will earn your trust again.
Ran Bar Yoshafat, the interesting thing there at the end where he says, I will earn your trust again, isn't that a bit of an admission of guilt?
No, it's not. That's why you have a legal process in a court of law. Now, just so we will be on the same page, Netanyahu has been accused for about a decade, and in the past election he got 30 seats in the parliament. I think that this whole motion of saying you need to send the prime minister home, of course it's a political motive here, nothing else. Otherwise, why would you care about having a long, legal, proper process? And I'm thinking that's what you should have. Doesn't matter if you're right-wing or left-wing. I'm sure every person wants to have a situation where every person has his day in court. A country that does not allow anyone, including the prime minister, to have their day in court is not a democratic country.
Well, Netanyahu didn't think so about Olmert, didn't he?
what Netanyahu said about Olmert, and I will say the same thing about Netanyahu, is that if you're incapable of functioning because you are being investigated so much, I would say the same about Netanyahu. The question that I have is, why is it so urgent to say that he has to resign right now, before anything has even happened? If he will be interrogated for 8 hours a day for like 3 weeks, yes, I would also say he has to resign because he's incapable of functioning as a prime minister. That's a good reason. That is within the Israeli law. It's within the Israeli legal system. But you have to understand, we are not the United States. If the prime minister goes home, you kind of cheated the election. Now, if you want to let the public decide, and you're saying 45% are, very worried about Netanyahu, that means that 55% are still, they still prefer Netanyahu with these accusations than anyone else right now.
Well, it actually said 40% said he should not resign, and the rest were undecided. So I just want to quote the whole poll there. So 40% sort of saying no, 45% saying resign, the rest on the fence. Neri Zilber, as we sort of zoom out a little bit and look at the big picture here, have we seen an erosion of trust in the Prime Minister, in the office of the Prime Minister throughout this scandal?
Well, I think the office as well as the man have taken a hit, but the Israeli public, I agree, they're taking a wait-and-see approach. And by the way, that has a lot to do with how Netanyahu has handled the last few months under investigation. He's lashed out not only at the police, but also at individual investigators. So in and of itself, that's actually unhelpful, that erodes various democratic norms that we have here in Israel. At the same time, though, there is a legal process that needs to be fulfilled. There's a new case that broke just yesterday, case 4000, which is actually separate than the police recommendations for indictment that came out last week. So something new, something significant might come out tomorrow, the next day, and that might have a public and political impact that we didn't see last week. Yep. So really, we have to be a bit more patient, but Netanyahu himself has to be a bit concerned.
Right. Ksenia, if he's acquitted on all charges, whether case 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, you name it, as the opposition, will you sit back and say, okay, we trust the legal system and business as usual, we will continue?
We definitely trust the legal system, but it's important to stress that until that acquisition happens, we still have a long time to go. And during this time, there will be a lot of question marks about every single decision of Benjamin Netanyahu vis-à-vis the situation in the north. We now have the critical situation in the north and a possibility of confrontation with Syria. We have now aggravated conflict also in the Gaza Strip and the severe humanitarian crisis that is erupting there. And every single decision by Netanyahu will be, of course, it will be seen through the lens of whether he is doing it for other reasons rather than the, taking care of, the affairs of the state and serving its citizens, but whether he is doing it in order to escape, perhaps, from another interrogation, another acquisition, and to, like he said, to earn the trust of the citizens of Israel.
Okay, Ran Bar Yoshafat, is he wagging the dog when it comes to Lebanon, Syria, fighting Iran by proxy in order to distract from these charges? Ksenia's words, not mine.
I understand. It's a very sad and sarcastic concept to say that the Prime Minister cares so little for the Israeli human life that he will do that. And it's if like Hezbollah and Hamas are not trying to murder Israelis every day. Look, here's the main point. If Netanyahu is corrupt, eventually he will go to jail. But if you are wrong, you made an undemocratic decision and changed the government in an unlegal procedure. And that's what I'm worried about as a citizen. To say that Netanyahu is going to go into what, come on, like Hezbollah are asking to kill Israel every day, same with Gaza, same with Iran. We didn't start anything new here. It's not a new concept that we have our struggle. We live in the Middle East, we have our conflict, and to say that the Prime Minister is so cynical about human life, I think it's a very sad and poor argument. It means that you don't really have a strong legal argument. I trust the court. Let them do their stuff. Let Netanyahu have a normal procedure like any other citizen in the state of Israel. I'm proud to live in a country where even the Prime Minister can go to jail, but I'm also proud to live in a country where even the Prime Minister has a fair legal process like any other citizen.
Ksenia?
Well, it's crystal clear that those who developed a personality cult of Benjamin Netanyahu, many of them are in the government, will say anything. And will, of course, battle with any argument in this regard in order to defend, the person who is more than one time already, yes, proved that ethically, morally, publicly, he's not fit to be a prime minister. Yes, I am indeed very worried about our situation, in a security sense. And I do believe, that sometimes when the situation is very crucial, when there are a lot of pressures, a prime minister can do wrong decisions. And, I want to remind you of another prime minister of Israel, whom I personally admire, and who took a very brave decision. Back in, the 70s, it was Yitzhak Rabin, who resigned, not, being waiting for the, criminal investigation and all of that. When it was found out, that the wife of the ex-prime minister, Yitzhak Rabin, has a sum of the dollars that she was not supposed to have in her account, $2,000 or $3,000. Just that was it. He made a decision to leave the post of the prime minister because he knew that ethically, morally, this is the right decision. This is what I would expect from any prime minister of Israel, from the left, from the right, and from the center.
Okay, Ksenia Svetlova, Neri Zilber, and Ran Bar Yoshafat. I've got to move on, but thank you very much for joining us here on the Newsmakers.
There's a reason to arrest Mr. Miguna. Those reasons will be brought to court. We are in a worse situation than we were before implementation of the new constitution. This is very absurd indeed.
Uhuru Kenyatta was sworn in as Kenya's president after elections late last year, but that didn't stop the opposition leader Raila Odinga from holding his own unauthorized inauguration, declaring himself the rightful leader. And if you're going to hold a ceremony, you need someone to officiate. That role fell to this man, Miguna Miguna, the lawyer for the opposition coalition NASA. He swore Odinga in front of thousands of supporters, but it came at a high personal cost. Miguna was arrested, charged with treason, and then deported to Canada. Since then, a Kenyan court has reversed the ruling, and Miguna says he will now return to lead the mother of all liberation wars. Well, we're joined now by the man himself, Miguna Miguna, coming to us from Toronto. Sir, pleasure talking to you again. The mother of all liberation wars.
Thank you.
Tell me that's just sort of grandiose lawyer talk and you don't actually mean a liberation war with violence on the streets.
No, not violence, unless, of course, the illegitimate regime in Nairobi try to visit it on the people. I'm not a person who speak emptily. And I think even the regime in Nairobi knows that. That is why out of a multitude of probably 1 million people that were at Uhuru Park on the 30th of January, the only person they abducted at night and detained incommunicado for 1 week before forcefully removing from the country is me. They know that I mean action and that I don't just talk. There is nothing I have threatened or promised or undertaken to do that I have not done. I said that Raila Odinga would be sworn in as the people's president on the 30th of January and that I would do it whether Raila Odinga liked it or not, and it was done. I then promised them that we would start a cavalcade of bonfires, banning Uhuru Kenyatta's portraits because he's illegitimate all over the country. And in panic, they decided instead to abduct me and detain me without trial.
When are you going back?
I will be going back next month. I'm going to start my global tour at the end of this week, which will take me to cities in Canada, the US, the UK, the mainland Europe, part of the Arab world, part of Africa, then back to Kenya. I should be back there by mid next month.
Now, what's interesting is that we see this as a sort of David and Goliath. They charge you with treason. They kick you out of the country. You're against Kenyatta, you're against Jubilee. But the recent news lines show that you're fighting your own friends from the NRM, which you formed after NASA. You had a go at the strategist, David Ndii, and the chief executive, Norman Magaya, accusing them of overstepping their mandate and trying to usurp the leadership of the organization. Even Raila Odinga saying, hey, ignore Miguna, I have full trust in these guys. So how can we expect you to take on Kenyatta and take on Jubilee and take on this system in the mother of all liberation wars when you don't have your own house in order?
Well, first of all, David Ndii and Norman Magaya are not members of the NRM. They are members of NASA. NASA is a political outfit that fights for political power at the ballot. They did not get political power at the ballot on August 8th because Uhuru Kenyatta stole that election. Now the war is being launched by the movement, NRM Kenya, which I lead. Now, NRM Kenya is an organic revolutionary movement, not a political party. We are not seeking power through the ballot. We are seeking power from the people directly through the exercise of their sovereignty on the streets. That will happen. I am not fighting David Ndii. I'm not fighting Magaya. I simply spoke the truth. Norman Magaya took 30 million shillings from Jubilee to drop the petition against the Nairobi governor who was not elected. That's a fact. Raila Odinga told me that. David Ndii opposed Raila Odinga swearing in my own house. I needed to be able to set the record straight because they were celebrating after I was arrested. You see, the problem with Kenya has been that we have fought liberation struggles through deception without integrity. I have decided, and members of the NRM have decided, that this war is going to be won through honesty, through truth, through integrity, and through courage, not deception, not lies.
But did it
having
sting you?
said that,
Certainly.
our enemy is Jubilee, the regime in Nairobi, not these other people. We just needed to set the record straight in our own house and then move ahead against the enemy.
I understand that fully. And you say that the enemy is Jubilee and the enemy is Kenyatta. But as a result of you trying to set the record straight, I'm going to go back to this again. You have the man you swore in as the people's president, yes, Raila Odinga, who's saying, don't listen to Miguna, yes, don't listen to this guy, ignore him. Doesn't that sting?
Listen, you ignore Miguna at your own peril. Raila Odinga knows that. It is easier said than done. The youth in Nairobi, the youth in Kenya are not going to ignore me. They listen to me. And they are not going to listen to anybody saying, ignore the person, the only person that validated Raila Odinga's victory, the only person that protected Raila Odinga from being relegated to the dustbin of history. Had Raila Odinga not been sworn in on January 30th, today we would have been singing dirges at Raila Odinga's funeral. Because of my courage, because of what I did, Raila Odinga has a lifeline politically. So there is no way that anybody is going to ignore me. I will not allow it, and NRM will not allow it.
I'm interested to hear what you had to say, that you don't seek power through the ballot box and through people exercising their sovereignty on the streets. So let's think this through for a second. So you believe that your group should come to power as a result of, say, 1 million people on the streets. What happens if Kenyatta can get 1 million people to support him on the streets? So then you're just going to what? You're going to decide who takes over the country based on crowd sizes? Is that democratic?
No, I think we have to be historical here. In the 90s, in the Philippines, the people power chased away the dictatorship of Marcos. it could have been earlier, but the people chased away Marcos' dictatorship on the street. In Burkina Faso, a few years ago, Compaoré, a dictator, was chased away by the people on the streets. It is not new. Revolutions are made on the street, not on the boardrooms, not at the ballot box. It is clear now that we cannot restore our democracy. We will not be able to restore the rule of law and the principles of constitutionalism in Kenya if we do not remove these two despots from power. And we are not going to do so through the ballot because they have captured the IEBC, the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, that is supposed to superintend over elections. So we are not going to have credible, verifiable, transparent elections for as long as Jubilee has a stranglehold over the IEBC. So then what is our next course of action? We don't want a bloodbath, but the people have the power to decide who their leaders are going to be. Uhuru Kenyatta does not control 30% of Kenyans. We know that. We saw during Jamhuri Day, less than 1,000 people turned up to watch him give a speech to a complete empty stadium. So we know he does not have people. So we are going to command our people to come onto the streets and to demonstrate that power belongs to the people. Uhuru Kenyatta may decide to concede and call for fresh elections, or he can decide to take a flight to Congo.
Okay.
The choice is his.
Miguna, we're looking forward to following Kenya's story and your story as well. I hope you'll talk to us again in the not-too-distant future and keep us updated on your movements. For now, thank you very much for joining us from Toronto. And that's all for this edition of the Newsmakers with me, Imran Garda. You can check out more of our stories on YouTube, Facebook and Twitter. Remember to like, follow and subscribe. Next time, teenagers who survived a mass shooting in Florida tell lawmakers you're either with us or against us. Their anger is leading to a mass rally, but will it lead to gun control? Until then, thank you for watching. Bye-bye.